Alright, we'll get straight to the point. There are only 10 things you need to do if you want your car battery to last 8 to 10 years. And trust us, mechanics hate this. The best part is, you don't need complicated tools, and every step is super easy that most people can do. Stick around to learn simple moves that can save your battery years of stress. If you've ever turned the key and your car cranks weakly, the problem might not be that the battery has reached retirement age. In many cases, the culprit is simply corrosion covering the battery posts, something everyone sees but few think is serious enough to ruin the entire electrical system. Corrosion on the battery posts isn't just dirt. It's a common reason cars struggle to start, charge weakly, and why battery life drops fast. As the corrosion layer builds up, resistance at the contact point increases significantly. The result? Your alternator has to work overtime to pump electricity into the battery. The battery still doesn't charge fully, and the alternator overheats. And this is exactly why many older car owners keep replacing batteries without realizing that all they really need is to clean the terminals. All you need to do is completely turn off the car, remove the terminals in the correct order to avoid grounding, then make a mixture of baking soda and warm water to neutralize the acid. Place a metal brush on it and scrub. Dry it, reinstall, positive terminal first, negative last, and you're done. You see, cleaning the battery posts every 3 months can help your battery live for many more years, not exaggerating. It lowers resistance, reduces stress on the alternator, and keeps the electrical system healthy. Want a car that cranks strong, a battery that lasts, and to avoid mechanics sneaking in unnecessary replacements? This is the starting point. If you want to extend battery life, just plug in a smart charger once a month. That's it. For some car owners, their trips are sometimes just home grocery home, and other times they leave the car sitting in the garage for a week. With this kind of usage, the alternator never gets a chance to fully charge the battery. A battery needs to run continuously for several minutes at a high enough RPM to charge properly, but most of their trips don't meet that requirement. When too little electricity is fed in, the battery gradually drops below 12.4 V for a long period. The danger zone where sulfation begins to form and eat away at battery life daily. This is the #1 reason millions of car batteries in the US die early. Not because the car is old, not because of the climate, but simply because the car doesn't run long enough to charge itself. And this is where a smart charger shines. Unlike the simple plug-in and pump charging, a smart charger operates in float mode, a state that keeps voltage stable around 13.2–13.6 V, gently and precisely. It doesn't pump electricity wildly, doesn't create heat, and doesn't overload the battery. When the battery is full, it automatically shuts off. When the voltage drops slightly, it top-ups automatically. You can think of it as a dedicated caretaker watching the voltage all day, doing something the alternator can never do, especially for cars that are rarely driven. Another great point is that float mode not only prevents new sulfation from forming, but also helps recover soft sulfate in weakened batteries. One smart charging cycle can restore some of the capacity that seemed lost, making the car crank stronger, run more stable, and no longer suffer from weak start mornings. And using a smart charger isn't as complicated as you might think. Just attach the 2 clamps to the battery terminals, or even better, install a quick disconnect port, then plug it in. You can do this once a month, or leave it plugged in continuously if the car mostly sits in the garage. When the battery is kept full regularly, many problems disappear. No sulfation, no deep discharge. The alternator isn't overworked every time you start the car after a week of inactivity. The entire charging system works smoothly, coolly, and stably. The result? Battery life can increase from 2 to 3 years to 8 to 10 years, entirely within reach, no luck or technical knowledge required. If your battery has caps on top it off with distilled water only. However, you might be wondering, aren't car batteries sealed now? Who still adds water? But in reality, not quite. Many flooded lead-acid batteries in older pickups, SUVs, or even some popular sedans still have check caps. And this is where things get interesting. Water in the battery can also evaporate. Engine heat, charging, and hot environments all cause water to slowly but continuously evaporate. When the water level drops, the lead plates start to be exposed. Once this happens, oxidation increases rapidly, capacity drops fast, and internal resistance spikes. And the most annoying part, you still think the battery is healthy, but in fact, it's losing lifespan every day. This is why many US drivers only notice a weak crank and assume they need a new battery, while the issue is simply lack of water. Here's where many go wrong. They add tap water. Tap water may seem harmless, but for a battery, it's almost poison. Tap water contains minerals, metal ions, and all kinds of impurities invisible to the eye. These settle at the bottom of the cell and create chemical reactions that destroy the lead plates. Over time, it increases resistance, reduces energy retained in each charge cycle, and accelerates sulfation to an irreversible level. Distilled water is completely different. Pure, no minerals, no ions, nothing to damage the internal structure. It's the only thing a battery accepts. The process is simple. Open each cell cap, check if the plates are fully submerged, and if not, fill just enough to cover them. No more. Don't fill to the brim. And handle gently, because plastic caps on older US cars, especially pre-2010, can crack from a strong twist. For cars in hot climates like Arizona, Texas, or Nevada, this is even more important because evaporation happens much faster. A small tip to avoid trouble: use a funnel with a spout or a small pouring bottle. This way you can avoid spills, which can pull acid out and corrode the battery case, tray, or car frame. Trust us, you don't want to see the metal under the hood pitted just from a few extra drops of water. Resting voltage, the voltage when the car is at rest, is the most accurate number to know a battery's true vitality. This is the voltage after the car has been off for a few hours with no load, no AC, no radio, no lights, nothing. If voltage while the engine runs is a makeup layer hiding issues, resting voltage is the battery's true face, healthy or not. Here's the quick read table every US car owner should memorize. 12.7 V means good, everything's perfect. 12.4 V means warning, starting to degrade. And 12.2 V indicates damage begins, sulfation is slowly eating away. It may seem like just a few tenths of a volt, but those few tenths are the difference between a battery living for many more years and a battery dying this coming winter. Don't let a small number fool you. 12.4 VIs is the literal line between life and death. At this level, the battery still has about 75% capacity. Below this threshold, sulfate begins forming. At 12.2 VI, around 50% capacity, sulfate hardens. And when it's hard, almost no miracle can save it. Drivers who rarely use their cars need to check voltage more than anyone. With short trips of 5 to 10 minutes, the alternator never has enough time to fully charge the battery. US weather doesn't help. Cold garages lower voltage faster, summer heat speeds up battery degradation. A battery constantly starved cannot live long. Not sure how to check? Let the car sit overnight. Then use a multimeter in DC mode. Red probe on positive, black on negative. Read the number. Done. If it's below 12.4 V, charge immediately with a smart charger before sulfation builds bricks inside your battery. If you don't drive your car often, disconnect the negative terminal. This may sound a bit unusual to many US drivers, but it's actually the simplest way to prevent your battery from silently draining like a phone plugged into a fake charger. Parasitic drain isn't anything scary. It's just a small but continuous amount of electricity the car consumes even after you've locked it, turned off the engine, walked inside, and assumed everything is asleep. But your car isn't. It quietly keeps drawing power. The ECU never fully shuts down, staying in light sleep mode. The alarm system and keyless entry constantly wait for signals. The radio, clock, and control modules need to retain their settings. And if you're driving a 2008 sedan with brittle wiring, parasitic drain can be much higher than standard. This isn't a problem if you drive daily. But for those who leave their car parked for 1 to 2 weeks, parasitic drain is a death sentence for the battery. Short trips of just a few minutes never give the alternator a chance to fully charge. Resting voltage drops to 12.4 VI, then 12.3 VIs, then 12.2 VIs. And at that point, sulfation begins, and your battery won't last long. So why disconnect the negative terminal instead of the positive? Because the negative is connected to the chassis. Removing it safely cuts off the entire electrical system. If you foolishly remove the positive first and your wrench touches the chassis, a spark is the least of your worries. To disconnect the negative, first make sure the engine is completely off. Use a wrench to loosen the negative terminal, twist gently, and lift it off. Keep the terminal from touching the post. When you need to use the car, reconnect and tighten. Done. Less than a minute, but it can save you hundreds on battery replacements and thousands if the alternator gets overworked too long. Heat is the #1 culprit that wears out batteries faster than anything else. High temperatures cause the electrolyte inside the battery to evaporate. When the liquid level drops, the plates are no longer fully submerged, and that's when conductivity begins to decline. You might think the car still starts fine and drives you to work every day, but inside the battery, a silent degradation is happening. This is also why people in Arizona, Nevada, or Texas need to replace batteries more often than those in Minnesota or Washington. Cold weather doesn't harm batteries. Hot weather does. So, what can you do? First, use a heat wrap. For just $5, a thermal wrap or inexpensive heat shield can significantly reduce direct radiant heat on the battery. On newer cars, many manufacturers already provide a cover. But if you're driving an older truck or sedan, adding this layer is like giving your battery a thin armor. Unflashy, but highly effective. Second tip, park in the shade. It seems obvious, but many don't realize that just 30 minutes under the sun can raise the engine bay above 150 degrees Celsius. You can't feel it from the driver's seat, but the battery has to endure all that heat. Each sun bath slightly reduces its lifespan. Choosing shade, parking in a garage, or even under a building's shadow is far better than leaving it in direct sunlight. Next, don't open the hood immediately after turning off the engine. Once the engine stops, the cooling airflow ceases, and the engine bay starts heating up quickly. Opening the hood at this time traps hot air above, causing thermal shock to components, including the battery. The best thing you can do is let the car cool down gradually. Simple, right? Just remember the rule. Controlling heat means extending battery life, and we trust you'll know what to do next. We have one more small tip that many veteran drivers have used: the penny trick. It's simply using a new, clean penny, mostly made of copper, and placing it near the negative battery terminal. Remember, nearby only, don't touch directly. You just tape it with a small piece of heat-resistant tape, and that's it. No expensive products, no $14 miracle corrosion eliminator spray in the auto aisle at Walmart. Just one penny can help extend your battery's lifespan. Why can a tiny coin do this? The copper on the penny oxidizes faster than your battery terminal. So when moisture and acid fumes naturally rise from the battery, the penny sacrifices itself to protect your battery. It's like the zinc sacrificial anodes under a boat or in a water heater. The penny acts as a shield, attracting corrosion toward itself instead of letting your terminal gradually degrade. A simple, cheap folk method, yet based on a completely legit chemical mechanism. You gotta admire the ingenuity of previous generations. The benefits of this trick are also visible. If you observe closely, you can see the white-green-gray salt buildup around the negative terminal decreases significantly. Poor conductivity that causes weak starting is reduced. Additionally, this trick helps minimize corrosion, especially for cars parked outdoors or not maintained regularly, and keeps cable connections stable for longer. Of course, the penny trick does not replace cleaning the terminals. It's just a supplementary measure, but a set-it-and-forget-it type. Install it, forget about it, check back in a few months. The penny will be partially corroded, while your negative terminal remains clean. Simple as that. You might be wondering how the serpentine belt and the battery are related. Let us explain. The belt is the connection that allows the engine to turn the alternator. Without it, or if it slips, the alternator doesn't spin at the required speed. When the alternator runs slowly, the charging voltage never reaches 13.81445 V. And then the battery falls into a state of chronic undercharging, forced to survive for months in a state of nutrient deficiency. The bitter truth is, the battery itself isn't damaged, it's just being starved. The warning signs are often overlooked. A squealing sound when starting the engine. That's the belt's cry for help. Many tend to ignore it until it's too late and the car refuses to start. The cause can be gentle driving habits. Many rarely accelerate hard, so the alternator never reaches an ideal speed to replenish the charge. When the belt is weak and spinning slowly, slippage happens constantly. As a result, the battery is always undercharged, especially when running the radio, heater, or lights in winter. And the consequences go beyond engine won't start. When voltage stays below standard for too long, sulfation begins. Sulfate sticks to the plates, gradually reducing real battery capacity. Day by day, week by week, month by month, the battery ages prematurely. You lose a year of battery life because of a single rubber belt failing its job. Conversely, when the belt is healthy, everything changes. The alternator spins at full speed, maintaining a stable voltage of 13.8, 14.45 V. The car starts more powerfully, the electrical system runs smoother, and the risk of stalling drops significantly. Plus, replacing the belt only costs a few $dozen, much cheaper than a new battery costing hundreds, or a tow truck several hundred more. Checking the belt is also quick. Every 6 months, ideally during an oil change, take 1 to 2 minutes to quickly inspect tension, cracks, and the belt's surface. If you hear squealing, smell burning rubber, or see an unusually shiny belt, that's a clear sign it's slipping and needs immediate replacement. A small action can prevent months of headaches. If you've ever sat in your car for a few minutes to listen to the radio, turn on the cabin fan, charge your phone, or turn on the interior lights to check a bill, let us be clear. All of those actions are quietly stealing your battery's lifespan. When the engine is off, every electrical device in the car, from the radio, cabin fan, interior lights, infotainment screen, GPS, dashcam, to phone charging ports, draws power directly from the battery. A few small devices might seem harmless, but together they create a load large enough to weaken the battery in just an afternoon. Mechanically, the battery becomes the only power source. The alternator is completely silent and cannot compensate for the energy being consumed. Voltage drops quickly, and if the battery is old or the weather is cold, this drop can happen within a few dozen minutes. Car batteries are not designed for continuous discharge. They are meant to provide high current for a short time when starting the engine. Yet the convenient habit of sitting for a few minutes is forcing the battery to overwork. The consequences of this habit are worse than you think. Deep discharge accelerates sulfation on the lead plates inside. Each time voltage drops deeply, battery life decreases. Repeated often, the battery ages fast, capacity drops, starting becomes weak, especially in winter. Long-term effects are even worse. A weak battery destabilizes the entire electrical system. Dim headlights, flickering infotainment screen, malfunctioning sensors. Each start with a nearly dead battery puts extra load on the starter motor, increasing the risk of failure. Want a solution? If you need to use electrical accessories while the car is off, run the engine for at least 3 to 5 minutes to let the alternator recharge. If you only stop for a few minutes without needing them, turn off all devices. And don't forget to check your battery periodically if you frequently follow these habits. Can you believe that driving your car just 15 minutes per week can make your battery last much longer than you think? It sounds so simple that many ignore it, but this simplicity saves more batteries than almost any other tip. In reality, many battery failures aren't due to defects, but simply because the car sits idle too long. A valuable wake-up call, especially for those who leave their car untouched for a week. All batteries self-discharge over time, even when not in use. Hidden systems like the ECU, clocks, sensors, and security systems quietly draw power. If the alternator doesn't recharge, voltage drops below safe levels, and battery weakness or failure becomes inevitable. Why is 15 minutes the minimum? The alternator needs time to bring voltage up to the ideal charging range of about 13.8, 14.4 V. Short trips of 3 to 5 minutes, even if the engine is warmed up, never provide enough time to replenish the energy used during starting. Driving 15 minutes lets the alternator operate steadily, fully charging the battery and keeping it out of the danger zone. This trick is especially important for people living in cold regions. Cold weather worsens the problem. One night of sub-zero temperatures can reduce battery capacity by 30 to 50%. So make it a habit to drive a short loop around the neighborhood. Not far, not wasting much gas. For infrequent drivers, set a reminder so you don't forget. So, with just a few extremely simple steps above, your car battery can last far longer than most people realize. Honestly, many mechanics might not want you to know these tips because it means they lose the chance to replace batteries frequently. Have you ever faced a dead battery on a cold morning or had to call a tow truck just because the car sat idle too long? Or do you have your own tips that no one talks about? Share your experiences and thoughts in the comments below. Lastly, everything in this video comes from public sources, manuals, and trusted automotive research. It's for educational purposes only, not to promote or criticize any brand. Always double-check, follow your manufacturer's guidelines, and make decisions that suit your vehicle. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.